Merry Meet Annie here. Welcome back to Tarot Together. This video is about studying the tarot. It's no small thing. You know that if you've gotten your first tarot deck. Then you fan out 78 cards. And you have an understanding that I have to know what each of these cards means and what they mean in relation to each other. Well, a lot of us at that point just panic, put the cards back in the box. We might not take up cartomancy at all. We might collect them for the art or for other ways they inspire us. We might even move on to, say something like oracle cards, which can seem, but I say aren't necessarily simpler. But at least there's usually less of them in a deck to deal with. So this studying of the tarot, that's what I wanted this video to be about. First and foremost, in my mind, it has to be fun. You have to enjoy it. You're going to spend some time with it. It's good training in a way, because when you get to where you're using the cards for insight, for readings, however you choose to use them, that's going to take time too. It's a matter of devotion, doing the readings, deciding what they are, how they fit into your life. Nothing about it is fast. So you need to enjoy the journey. If you're naturally curious about things, if you like to explore and investigate, you'll do well. The thing is, it can get all heady and up here with all the information available regarding the traditional interpretations of the cards. We get our head in the gathering of information and collecting facts and figures. We turn ourselves into a library of sorts. That's okay if that brings us pleasure. We might have to consider that gathering of information as a necessary evil in a way, because it's the diving board from which we jump off into what the cards will be for us. But it is so important to be curious about the nature of the cards, because you're also in that process being curious about your own nature and the nature of the universe. First and foremost, it has to be fun. Probably the most serious of all the things that I suggest in regard to study of the tarot is the importance of a journal. Now, some of you are all excited about that. You've already got where you're planning to get a certain journal to use. Or you've declared certain file spaces on your computer set up for your studies. Others panic at the very thought of journaling. Journaling can be done at so many levels of sophistication. Some of us write books in our journals. Yeah, I'd be one of those. I'm a lifelong journaler, and I love capturing my thoughts and reflections in writing. Others will do jottings of short sentences or words, trying to capture the fleeting feelings, the realizations and the discoveries along the way. Some will draw, some will, catch lines of poetry. There are as many ways to journal as there are those of us who take it up. 78 cards require that we create a personal history, an archive, something that we can add to as our experience grows. Something also which brings us back to reconsider when we get ourselves in the rut, in a rut regarding any one of the cards. We need to go back and relearn, in a way, what we already learned and discovered but may have forgotten along the way. Our journal is important because it is ours. It's not what someone told us. It's not what we read in a book or a website or saw in a video. It is our words, our experiences. I dare say, your personal record of your journey in tarot, your journal in whatever form it takes for you, is required. Unless you have a mind capable of memorizing a memory a lot greater than mine is. Your journal is a way of giving yourself credit for the explorations you've done, for the personal insight you've gained. It's your history when it comes to the cards, outside of any of their traditional history. I'd suggest when you're first starting that you start with a deck that has a lot of documentation out there. That's why the Waite-Smith deck is so popular for beginners, because so many different perspectives, from a very traditional to a very new age viewpoint, have been collected when it comes to the Waite-Smith deck. Oh, the little white booklet, the pictorial key to the tarot, the original words that Waite assigned to it. Yeah, they're there. They're very small, a drop in the bucket or less, compared to everything that is out there to read about it. It's not the only deck that has such extensive research and interpretation done on it, but it might be the one with the most information available. So it's important when you're learning to find yourself a deck that has a lot of information that you can gather regarding it. Oh, it might not be the deck you use forever, because you'll see that same symbolism the more you learn about it in the other decks that it might have inspired. We talked about that when we talked about the Waite-Smith clones. But it's important early on to get as many perspectives, traditional and otherwise, on the deck, and which is why this series and my personal studies is all around the Waite-Smith, because of the abundance of information available on it. YouTube videos, a great source of learning. On our Facebook page for Tarot Together, we've been collecting a few files of information. YouTube channels we like, websites and blogs we like, discussion forums we like, and books that we like. In the here and now, books is the one we're having the greatest discussion on. Turn to all of those things. A lot of them are free resources. A lot of the books have been around for so long that you can find them used at a very small price. According to where you live, you might find those books in your library. Where I live, no such thing in a library when it comes to that. But where you live, it might be different. Use the resources at hand. If you have the means to purchase books, by all means, think about starting a bit of a library for yourself. But there's so many ways you can investigate each of the cards and without spending a penny. The important thing about studying the tarot is you're not going to learn it. I haven't learned it in the 40 years it's been in and out of my life. And no matter how great anyone's expertise, whether they write scholarly books, whether they're professional readers, whether they're just very sophisticated amateur readers who read for themselves or for intimate friends, you never learn the tarot. No two people look at it the same. The information you're going to gather will sometimes amplify each other. In other words, one interpretation is the same interpretation you see someplace else, kind of like emphasizing the importance of that particular interpretation, but you're also going to find in any of the sources I mentioned differing opinions, opposite opinions on some of the things that you've read. And that's all part of the fun of it. There's no give-in. It is whatever it ends up being for you. Nobody that you will read or watch will tell you what it is. They might say they're doing that, but the fun of studying tarot is you kind of take their words with a grain of salt, and you take from them what resonates with you. It might involve a process through your journaling, however you put together your notes on the cards, of jotting down, for me it was almost feverishly as I was beginning to study, the things I discovered that other people said about any one of the cards. I still have that as my background information, but what grew out of that is what that became for me. I still like going back at my notes on my jotted down notes and collections. Thank goodness for things like cut and paste and e-readers where you can take the words right off the page and paste them into a document. My tarot journal is online. I failed to mention that when I mentioned journals. Because I like to be able to search for keywords. I like to be able to categorize and subdivide things. When I start with the Fool, I'll show you how I do that so you understand why my discussions of each individual card go the way that they do. There's no singular meaning for the cards or any of the symbols on them. There are traditional ones, but even those can be debated. So the fun of it is, you're not learning something that's so given that it's inflexible. The challenge of it is there's so much information, then you're left deciding what it is for you. One of the things that is important about studying is letting whatever your natural curiosity is, enter the picture. When it comes to the Waite-Smith deck, I think I mentioned it in one of the earlier decks, there's a lot of influences in that deck. Things like mythology, theosophy, alchemy, numerology, astrology, the Kabbalah, Freemasonry, the Legends of the Grail, the Order of the Golden Dawn, and a general understanding of Western mystery traditions as well as Eastern ones, and the practices aligned to them. Neoplatonism. A really important part of the tarot for me. The thing is, when all of those things are mentioned in the sites or the books or whatever sources you're exploring, having fun exploring, I hope, if any of them intrigues you, take on a side study to investigate it further. We discussed Neoplatonism in my first circle as part of our training before initiation, so I wasn't a stranger to it, but I have to say that it was tarot luring me in to understanding that and alchemy at a deeper level, which made me have my personal journeys into exploring those things. So if it intrigues you, investigate it further. If the astrological implications intrigue you or they complement other studies you're doing, or those related to numerology, go for it on your own. When your explorations actually step outside the traditional book, site, whatever, on tarot, enter into those sources. For instance, if you were exploring the symbols of Freemasonry, you'd find them then waiting for you in the symbols in the tarot. Let your curiosity take you off in so many directions, wherever it calls you. If there's an aspect that does not resonate with you, for instance, I have yet, although it's a plan in my retirement years, to take on an in-depth study of the Kabbalah. So the symbols in the tarot that have to do with the Kabbalah kind of go over my head. I'm not ready at this point in my life to journey out, following my curiosity, and get up to my eyeballs in a study of the Kabbalah. And until I do, those particular symbols just don't resonate with me. But the things I learned in those trails that wandered off from something that's very tarot focused, that informed and fed the symbolism of the tarot, they became part of my personal journey, sometimes influencing my beliefs and my practices along the way. Curiosity. Intellectual curiosity, and where it takes you. For a lot of you on this channel watching my videos, maybe not so much on the Facebook page, which has more of a mix of tarot students and readers. Here, most of you who come to my channel are pagans of some sort. Allow your curiosity to embrace the concept of the tarot as a pagan experience. Sometimes we get lost and confused by the Christian symbolism in the tarot, because we have forgotten the source of so many of the Christian symbols. They go back to the times before, times we know well, and that we have been exploring through our spirituality and our practices as pagans. The cards capture that wisdom of an earlier time, but since it was brought to fruition in the form of the cards in, maybe the 1500s or so, you could think of the time at which that happened. Who had the money to design, to purchase inks, to print? The power behind that, the history that led to that, is part of what the pagan can explore and appreciate through the powerful Christian symbols that are part of the tarot, along with things like numerology and astrology and the Golden Dawn and Masonry. All of that, the Christian symbols are equally as powerful. They are human history, and they represent the collective consciousness. Sometimes we recognize in them something more ancient, much more ancient, than the way they were captured in the 1500s. We find traces of the elements in our gods and our goddesses, understanding of initiation, individuation, that elevation that we each take on individually in our spiritual path is part of this journey. So part of the curiosity that we give way to is a spiritual and an energetic curiosity. When we study, we might want to consider, for instance, if we're studying the Waite Smith, what influenced it? What contemporary studies to it might provide us with more information? Specifically, for me, the more I learned about the Tarot de Marseille, which is where Waite took a lot of his inspiration from, sometimes crediting it, and sometimes not. I learned so much more in depth. Studies of the Thoth Tarot, same thing. So many of the same symbols, even though those cards look so different. Sometimes complementary studies, if you're intellectually curious, can help you in your study.